Hey guys, how are you today? Quick rant before we dive into today's chaos. As some of you might have noticed, YouTube's algorithm has decided I'm not special anymore. Shocking, I know. So now if you don't like, comment, or do a little backflip in the algorithm's honor, this video might just vanish into the void, never to be seen again. Seriously though, even a hi or "this is wild" in the comments helps way more than you think. It tells YouTube, hey, people actually like this channel. Maybe don't hide it from everyone. That can really help push my videos out to a wider audience, not just to my subscribers. So if you enjoy these stories and want to support the channel, that's the best way to do it. Now grab a drink, get comfy, and enjoy the drama. You won't want to miss this one. Now, being an only child in a household where my parents openly despised each other wasn't easy. Their frequent and intense arguments, with one of them storming off in a car, became a weekly occurrence. It was hurtful because although they never directed their anger towards me physically, they consistently unloaded their feelings about each other onto me. I was a witness to their constant bickering, and honestly, no child wants to bear that burden. The topic of divorce has been a recurring theme in nearly every argument for as long as I can remember. It felt like one of the most frequently used words in their vocabulary. Strangely enough, I found myself secretly hoping for them to follow through on those discussions. It wasn't that I didn't love my parents. I genuinely did. However, I also believe that they both deserved to be with someone who genuinely loved and appreciated them. The toxic environment created by their continuous conflict made me wish for a resolution that could bring them individual happiness and peace. One night during dinner, they sat me down and some bad news, urging me not to get upset. They explained that they had exhausted all efforts, and then they dropped the bombshell. They were going to get a divorce. I simply responded with an okay and continued eating. Surprisingly, instead of understanding, they both burst into tears, accusing me of insensitivity and questioning whether I had any feelings at all. According to them, it was unimaginable for someone not to react emotionally to their parents' divorce. Honestly, I did not care, as I knew this would happen eventually. So I just kept on eating. Soon my dad moved out while I continued to live with my mom. Their divorce battle went on for months while I would live with my dad during the weekends and with my mom during the weekdays. Eventually their divorce was finalized and they went their separate ways. They tried their best to be polite with each other for the sake of co-parenting me. However, all of this changed when my stepmom Abigail came into my dad's life. It was quite obvious that she and Dad had been having an affair long before my parents' divorce, since she was his co-worker and knew a lot about me. Once I decided to ask her about it, and she admitted smugly that she had been sleeping with my dad 6 months before the divorce. She told me how she knew my dad was not happy and reached out to him, suggesting they go out for coffee to provide him with emotional support. While it may have been a well-intentioned gesture, my father is an introvert and never had a lot of friends, so he accepted the invitation, and this is how their affair started. Although I wanted my parents to be happy, I also knew that the affair was wrong, but I couldn't say that to Mom as it would break her. I love spending time with my dad during the weekends. However, things took a turn when he started going out during the weekends to spend time with Abigail and would leave with a babysitter till around 10 to 11 p.m. I would wait for him to come back because we had a tradition of him tucking me in, especially since I was still a child at that time. He would come home drunk and give excuses about how he was stuck at work, which we both knew was a lie. Sometimes he would sneak Abigail into the house as well when he thought I was sleeping. It was a bit weird for me, but I learned to accept it. Abigail eventually moved in after a year, and the first thing she did was remove all photos of me and Dad from his living room. This move struck me as odd. She told my dad how the living room should have pictures of nature and stuff rather than family. She also changed my bedroom while I was not there. When I came back one weekend, she had turned everything in my room into a beige and neutral color. I was furious and made it clear to her that this was my space and I was my dad's daughter, but she told me how she hated how ugly and childish my room looked, so she had changed it. When I cried and told my dad he and Abigail had a fight, she screamed that I should just stay with my mother if I had so many issues, and that she and Dad should start a new life together without me throwing a tantrum about it. I remember knowing then and there that she was going to hate me forever, and she did. One weekend, when my mother was dropping me off at my dad's place, he informed us that he and Abigail had gotten married that week. It was apparently a last-minute decision. We were shocked to hear that, since Abigail had never even bothered to talk to my mother or even acknowledged her presence. But now she was a part of our family. Nevertheless, my mother congratulated my dad. That night, my dad had organized a dinner party for his friends to celebrate his wedding. During this party, I heard Abigail, who was quite drunk at this point, telling her friends about how she hated that my dad had a daughter and wished that their affair had come to light during my parents' divorce, so that my mother would have primary custody and I would not ever come to visit my dad at all. This broke my heart, since I had no idea what I had done for her to hate me so much. A few months later, my father told me how he had accepted a new position at a job that was 2 hours away from my mother's place. This infuriated my mother, because she now had to drive so far to drop me at his place, and told him how she would not be able to make it every time. She questioned him as to why he was moving so far away. This is when my dad then told us about how his new job was going to pay him 3 times more than his current job. He did feel guilty about living so far away from me. So, for the next few weeks, my parents talked, and in the end they decided that I would start living with my dad, since he was going to be shifting to a better district with much better schools. I did not like this decision at all, since I already had friends in my current school. But my dad convinced me that I was going to go to a high-end school with better opportunities. Despite my initial reluctance, I eventually agreed to move in with my father. The transition to my father's new place came with its challenges. The distance between my parents' homes made it harder for my mother to visit me, but they both thought this was the best decision for my future, since I was joining a superior school. My father's job was demanding. He would wake up at 6 a.m., leave by 8 a.m., and didn't return until 8 p.m., so he would have no idea what went down between me and Abigail. At the time of the move, I was about to start 10th grade, a challenging period compounded by the fact that I was entering the school after everyone had already formed friendships in 9th grade. As a student, I was quite reserved and introverted, just like my dad, so I didn't know how to make new friends. I was also struggling with terrible insomnia at that time, which was maybe because of my anxiety, but I would hardly be able to sleep until the wee hours of the morning. This would lead to occasional missed bus rides, and unfortunately, Abigail was always unwilling to drive me to school. As a result, I had to walk 2 miles, and would then end up being even later than I already was. While it was true that missing the bus was completely my own fault, I still wish she would have had some compassion for me when I was clearly struggling. She would also refuse to cook for me, except for dinners when she knew my dad would be home, and then she could act like a good person in front of him. This is exactly when I started eating a lot of junk food in my life, which I would buy with my lunch money that my dad would have left for me every day. I was clearly not doing well, and instead of helping me, she would make fun of me, saying how I looked like a pig and how I was clearly looking to be bullied. She would not help me with any homework or doubts I had by saying that she was not my mother. I would wait with bated breath for my dad to come home, after which I knew that she would treat me normally. She would yell at me if I didn't make my bed perfectly, or if, according to her, there was dust on my study table, even though I would clean it regularly. If I cried due to her yelling, he would tell me that if I didn't like it, then I should just move back in with my mother because I was being bratty. Every day she would remind me how this was not my house and make me feel like a guest. As you can imagine, I was depressed and anxious and would have panic attacks. No one understood me. My dad was too busy to see the truth, and I was afraid of telling my mother and causing another big fight between my parents. Once, when things became too hard, and I could not take it anymore with Abigail, I decided to run away to my mother's place. I had been saving up money that my grandparents had given me for Christmas, so I decided to book a bus ticket and packed a few things so I could go away. My mother was shocked to see me at her doorstep, since she and Dad had been calling everyone like crazy trying to get in touch with me. I cried and hugged my mom, and it felt like I was finally at home. She knew instantly something was wrong. When she found out what Abigail had been doing, my parents had a huge fight. My dad refused to accept that Abigail had been doing all this to me and told my mother how I was just over-exaggerating, which made me cry even harder. When my mother threatened to take this to court, he finally listened to her. He promised us that he would talk to Abigail and get to the bottom of this. As you can imagine, my dad did discuss with Abigail and found out how she had not been giving me any food while he was out, and he shouted at her a lot. I don't know what happened, but he came over the next weekend to pick me up and told me that Abigail was very sorry, and this wouldn't happen again. My mother warned him, and my dad assured us that she was going to be better. I guess my dad must have told her a lot because Abigail never bothered me about that. She would cook for me begrudgingly, but other than that, she would completely ignore me as if I didn't exist. To be honest, I quite liked that since it allowed me to coexist with her in the same house. We would have a few fights here and there, but it was still manageable. Eventually, I managed to complete high school and moved away to college. My dad kept telling me to pick the college in his city, but I knew that I had to go far away from him and his wife. We barely remained in contact since I refused to visit him during my holidays. This would make my dad sad, and he would tell me how I should be a better daughter and how everyone else's child keeps visiting them. But the truth was that after I started staying away from my dad, I could see just how depressed I had been while living with his wife. My brain could finally process how difficult my life had been, and I knew seeing him with her would bring me down again, and I didn't want that. As a result, I was closer to my mom. She would regularly check up on me, and I would visit her every time I got time off from college. When I graduated, my dad and mom were there to cheer on me. Later, I was looking forward to having dinner with my parents, just like every other kid, but my dad informed us that he had to drive back home since Abigail didn't like eating alone. This was disappointing to hear, but I had learned not to fight with him when it came to Abigail, so I kept my mouth shut. For the next couple of years, I went on to have a job and eventually met my current partner, Michael. Since he came into my life, everything has changed for the better. His love and support have made a huge impact, bringing joy and a sense of completeness that I had been missing previously. Michael has a great relationship with my mother and has met my dad once or twice, but even those few times he has expressed to me how he doesn't like the way my dad treats me and prioritizes his wife over me every single time. For example, once when he came to visit me with Abigail, I had planned out the entire day so I could show my dad around my city. I was telling him about this plan on call when Abigail overheard and started complaining about how she was not in the mood to go anywhere and insisted that she and Dad should spend some romantic time together and that he could meet me later for dinner. My dad tried to tell her that they had come for the sole purpose of seeing me, but she put her foot down, telling him how he never took time off from work, so he should spend the day with her and then meet me later in the evening. I did not want to come in between them, so I just kept my mouth shut and accepted her plans. Now, coming on to last year during my birthday, my dad sent me flowers and ordered a special dish since he could not visit me. For context, I've been a vegetarian all my life, and everyone knows about it. The flowers were wonderful, but when I got the dish, I was shocked to see that it was a beef dish. Both my boyfriend and I were at a loss of words and thought maybe the restaurant had messed up the order. I called my dad, who asked me if I liked the dish, and before I could ask him, he started saying how I should thank Abigail for being so thoughtful, since she had apparently ordered the dish for me. I took a deep breath, as I understood then that this was all my stepmother was doing. I told my dad how she had ordered beef for me when everybody knew that I was vegetarian. My dad stopped talking, and I could hear him asking Abigail, who confirmed the same. I could hear Abigail justifying how she thought my boyfriend could eat it anyway if I didn't like it, so I should not be complaining about something both of them had gifted. I was infuriated hearing her reasoning. In my frustration, I told my dad how this was supposed to be my birthday gift, and it was ridiculous for her to send me something she knew I wouldn't like. This led to a heated argument between my father and me, who tried to convince me that Abigail didn't have an ulterior motive and that I should at least thank her. I refused, saying that I never asked for the dish, hence I should not be obligated to thank her. To add to the argument, Abigail started crying beside my dad and saying how I was being ungrateful and that I was still a spoiled brat. I cut the call in anger because I didn't want to say something I would later regret. My dad did text me that night apologizing for what had happened. To be very honest, I did not care about the gift that much, but it did hurt me that my dad didn't love me enough to send me a gift that I would actually like. He was then expecting me to thank his wife when she was the culprit behind all of this. Since then, I have hardly spoken to my dad. Michael supported me because he also understood how wrong it was for Dad and Abigail to treat me this way. My dad would call me sometimes, but I would speak to him for a few minutes only. This has been going on for quite some time. Last week, I received a voice note from my dad telling me how he wanted to talk to me about something urgent. I called him thinking it was an emergency, and he informed me that he had decided to leave Abigail. I was shocked to hear that since I had never expected my dad to have the balls to leave her. But he told me how he had been thinking about it, and how he had not been happy for a long time. He talked about how he wanted to remain alone and just travel the world. This didn't seem to be a good enough reason to me, so I questioned him if there were any major issues in his marriage, and with a bit of cajoling, he opened up to me finally about the real reason behind his decision. He told me about how Abigail's infertility issues were driving her crazy. She was taking out her frustration on my dad every day by telling him how he was not man enough to make her pregnant, and also threatening him that she would eventually cheat on him if he didn't give her a child. He told me that he was too tired and old now to go through all of this, and just wanted to have a peaceful life. I did understand where he was coming from, since I had seen him work hard his entire life so much, so that I never even had to take up any debt during college, unlike my friends. He had provided for me financially and materialistically whenever I needed anything. My dad did deserve to be peaceful and happy at his age. I assured him that whatever he chose to do, I would be there for him. He thanked me for my support. He also talked with my mother about this, so she also knows. Over the years, they have become quite good friends and have been there for each other through tough times like this. Now, last night, as I was about to go to bed, I started receiving calls from Abigail. Obviously, I didn't pick up, but she kept calling. When she realized that I wasn't picking up, she started calling Michael. In frustration, I picked up her call. On the other end, I could hear her sniveling and crying. She began by informing me that my dad had decided to leave her, dropping the bombshell as if expecting me to be devastated. To her surprise, I remained calm. She asked me if I already knew about it, but I remained quiet. Then she started bombarding me with questions about whether my dad was cheating on her and urged me to spill the truth. Unable to contain a snicker, I bluntly told her that if she suspected anything, she should confront my dad directly. I didn't mince words when I reminded her of the audacity it took for her to question my dad's fidelity, when she herself had engaged in an affair with him during my parents' marriage. This seemed to infuriate her. She raised her voice, accusing me of being heartless and insensitive. I calmly expressed to her that I honestly did not care about their divorce. What mattered to me was the fact that my dad was finally leaving her, and I was happy that karma had come to bite her back. She continued to cry and scream, attempting to guilt-trip me by claiming how much she had done for me over the years, and that as her stepdaughter I should have some sort of obligation and loyalty to her. She insisted that the least I could do was talk to my dad and offer tips to salvage their relationship. In response, I let her know that their relationship was none of my business, and I had no intention of meddling or advising anything. I told her that she had done absolutely nothing for me, except give me trauma, depression, and anxiety. Hence, she should not expect my loyalty. I told her that I was glad that she was finally going to be out of my dad's life, as well as all of ours. Since then, my stepmother has been sending me nasty messages saying how I was a bad daughter for not trying to save my dad's second marriage and how I could reason with him. This is absolutely ridiculous since I have honestly nothing to do with his decision. Although I can talk to my dad, but I feel like he is making the right decision by leaving her. She is insufferable, but I might be biased also. Hence I am on Reddit. Am I an a-hole for not helping my stepmother? OP doesn't owe Abigail a single thing. She made OP's childhood miserable, belittled OP, and treated OP like a stranger in her own father's home. Now that karma has finally caught up with her, she's trying to guilt OP into saving her marriage. Absolutely not. OP is not her therapist, and she definitely not her lifeline. OP should let her face the consequences of her cruelty. And now let's hear community's opinion. Honestly, you handled this better than most people would. The way you calmly told her, it was none of your business was perfect. She's desperate because she knows once your dad leaves, she loses everything: money, status, and control. She's not calling you out of love. She's calling because she's panicking. Keep your boundaries strong. The audacity of this woman to demand loyalty after everything she's done is mind-blowing. She emotionally abused you for years and now expects sympathy? I'm proud of you for standing your ground. People like her only learn when they finally lose their power over others. You did the right thing by refusing to get involved. I'm actually glad your dad is finally seeing her true colors. You tried to survive her manipulation for years. Now she's showing him what she really is. Don't feel bad for not helping her. This is the same woman who erased your pictures, starved you, and mocked you. If anything, she's lucky you even answered the call. Update 1. Firstly, I want to express my gratitude for the overwhelming support, comments, and private messages I have received since sharing my story. It's truly heartening to know that there are compassionate strangers out there, willing to offer me their perspectives and guidance on this matter. Now to address some development since my initial post. I have had conversations with both Michael and my mother about the situation with Abigail. It turns out they share a common sentiment that my decision not to intervene in my dad's impending divorce is the right one. Michael especially has been a pillar of support throughout this ordeal. He reassured me that my well-being is paramount and that I shouldn't feel obligated to fix a marriage that has long been marred by toxicity. My mother, while understanding my hesitation, has encouraged me to inform my dad about Abigail's harassing messages and provide him with screenshots as evidence. Despite the strained relationship I've had with my father, she believes that he deserves to know the truth. I'm conflicted about this because even though I am well aware of Abigail's manipulative behavior, I also recognize my father is going through a difficult time. It's been a while since we were close, and I'm hesitant to disrupt him further with this news. Nevertheless, I've decided to gather the courage to have a conversation with my dad in the coming days. I'll share my concerns, the impact of Abigail's actions on my life, and the reasons behind my decision to distance myself from their relationship. It won't be an easy conversation, but I believe honesty is crucial, and he deserves to know how his soon-to-be ex-wife is treating me. I will keep you all updated on how the discussion unfolds. Update 2. Hi everyone. It's been a month since my last update, and a lot has transpired during this time. After my initial post, I decided to take the advice of many and talk with my father. I had a lengthy conversation with him about everything that had transpired, and it was a revelation for both of us. First of all, my father was genuinely shocked to learn that Abigail had called me after he talked with her about the divorce. He told me that he had no idea about it since she had stormed out of the house after a screaming match. Then I hesitatingly told him about the messages she had also been sending. He was appalled and angered by her actions, particularly the vile and nasty things she had been saying to me. He insisted that I immediately send him all the screenshots, stating that he would forward them to his lawyer as it might come in handy during the divorce, and told me that he would be talking to her about it. He assured me that this won't happen again. Then he opened up to me about the real reasons behind Abigail's desperate attempts to salvage her relationship. It turns out that when they got married, they had signed a prenuptial agreement. My dad had learned his lesson from his divorce with my mother, so he didn't want to go through all that again. Hence, in the event of their divorce, she would be entitled to nothing, which explains her resentment and anger. This is why Abigail was hoping that by manipulating me, she could somehow influence my father to reconsider the divorce, saving her from financial loss. I had no prior knowledge of this prenup, and I expressed my approval of his decision to protect his assets. He then told me how her entire family had been calling and abusing my dad for the past couple of days by telling him that he should pay Abigail half of his assets, even though they had originally signed a prenup since she had stuck by him all these years and deserved monetary compensation. I told my dad that I hoped he would do no such thing since Abigail could have continued to work and earn money for herself, but she chose to leave her job immediately and stay at home the whole day for all these years. My dad assured me that he wasn't going to be influenced by them, and that the prenup was ironclad anyway. We continued talking, and my dad disclosed that he had moved out of their shared place because he couldn't endure Abigail's screaming matches any longer. He was currently living in a motel trying to find some solace away from the toxic environment. He did ask me about Michael and my work. Overall, my dad seemed to be doing okay considering the circumstances. It was a relief to see that he was taking steps to free himself from an unhealthy and unhappy marriage. Update 3. Hey everyone, it's been quite a ride since my last update, and I have to share a major revelation that has honestly left everyone shocked. My dad recently found out that Abigail has been cheating on him for the past year. Yep, you read that right. Turns out she's been having a little rendezvous with one of her friend's husbands. Classic, right? I swear sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. Apparently, Abigail would use the guise of going out for girls' night to secretly meet up with this guy. It all came crashing down when her friends stumbled upon their chats, where Abigail was practically forcing the poor guy to leave his wife so they could ride off into the sunset together. The friend, right furious, confronted her husband about the whole mess, and he spilled the beans on the affair. The friend then drove straight to Abigail to confront her about all this. Abigail, true to her character, obviously refused to accept her mistake and instead blamed the friend for her husband cheating on her. In anger, the friend decided to reach out to my dad since she already knew they were getting a divorce. The friend informed my dad about everything and even told him how she was leaving her husband after this. When my dad dropped this bomb on me, I have to admit I was shocked, but in a weird way, not entirely surprised. Abigail has also reached out to my dad, attempting to justify her actions by blaming him and saying how her infertility issues had compelled her to do crazy things. My dad, though, does not care about her explanations and is having none of it. The divorce proceedings will continue as decided. Update 4. Hello, wonderful people. It's been 6 months since my last update, and this time I am back with some positive news. My dad is finally a free man living his life and doing remarkably well. After the divorce was finalized, he kicked Abigail out of his home. We have all collectively blocked Abigail from our lives. No more drama, no more toxic messages, just pure blissful peace. Honestly, it feels like a weight has been lifted, and the air is clear again. On the home front, things are surprisingly harmonious. I make it a point to regularly check up on both my parents. It turns out that a little distance from the chaos has allowed all of us to rebuild a healthier connection. Michael and I are taking our parents, my folks and his, to a retreat where we can all bond and create some beautiful memories together. We want to see how well our families gel. My parents are on board, and they're looking forward to this family retreat. On a more personal note, Michael and I are having serious conversations about marriage. It's an exciting prospect, and I can't help but feel a surge of joy at the thought of building a future together with him.